All right, let's jump right into it. Okay, so welcome everyone once again to another session of the defense series. For those that probably might not know, the defense series has been on since January, and every month, or almost every month, almost every month, because one month we couldn't have it because I had a clash. So I shifted. So we shifted it to the following week, and that ended in another month, which was this month. So um yeah, so almost every month we've been having a session regarding apologetics of Christian faith. We've treated many topics as does God exist or the existence of God? If God exists, why is there so much evil in the world? God amongst which religion? Christianity amongst other religion. Is it true? Which one is not? How do we know what is true? Engaging in Islam and all of those things. Last month, we in the last session, right, we looked into science and Christianity. How is it that does science disprove Christianity? Right? Do scientific laws or discoveries of science say anything about Christianity, if at all it says something, right? And if at all it says something, does it say that excuse me, does it say that Christianity is invalid? Right, and all of those things. And it has been quite a number of attempts at equipping and giving unbelievers and believers alike an answer to questions that they might have, questions that they might not know they have, or questions that they might not have had, but uh it would help them to be able to answer those questions in the future. All right, and today um we are going going to as probably the flyer or the link that brought you here said, we're going to be looking at what I coined your truth, my truth. Your truth, my truth. And as the title implies, looking into the postmodern culture, or should I say pop culture, and how it has it is responsible, how it has influenced how we think, how we define what truth is, and some of the issues that are attached to it, like sexuality, um, uh, absoluteness of moral value, or intrinsic, yeah, morals. Let me just put it like that. Intrinsic values of human beings, and all of those things. So it's going to be a quite philosophical conversation. So I'd like us from the start now, right, to put on your thinking caps, right, so that as a wise man once said, so that you stop capping. But then, so that would pay close attention to everything I'll be saying, and I'll try as much as possible to turn it down, so that would not get lost. And I'll try as much as possible to not go ahead of myself, right? Or to be too fast, right? And saying this now, I would like each and every one of us, I said, pay attention and all of that. But if you do not understand something I said, or if you miss something I said, I'll keep an eye on the chat section. You can just tell me, oh, please say that again, or can you explain this again? All right, that happened last session, and it was interesting that people were, so it just helps me know that you are following me. Okay, so say that again. Can you explain that again? All right. So that being said, I've I've said that I probably would be saying a story at the beginning of every TDS session. Just to help us know, have an understanding of why it is important to do apologetics before we get into each session's discuss. Right. But today I don't have a story. In fact, I have some stories, but the stories would be the stories I have are in the notes, right? They are with the teaching I'm about to give. So let's just get into them and then we'll tell the story. Stories. Right. So let's get into today's discourse. Are you excited? Somebody ready to dive in. So your truth, my truth. As I said earlier, what does this entail? The postmodern culture that we are in, or pop culture, how it has defined truth. There's a relativism that has been given to truth. There's a relativism, or yeah, there's a relativism that has been given to truth, in that, we can say that, oh, what is true for Enyolua, for example, might not be true for Kofo. Hi, Kofo, by the way. How are you doing? What is true for Kofo might not be true for Candace. What is true for Candace might not be true for Naomi, and all of those things. And because of that, we have defined or redefined many aspects of the society, or of the identity of man, such as, as I said, I think I've got ahead of myself already. Identity, um we have very many things, like the identity, like what is moral and what is not, like what is socially acceptable and what should be normalized, and all of those things. But before we actually look intricately into some of these things, it is important that I segmented my notes or this session into different subheadings, right? And I'll be taking them in progression, one after the other. And it's so that we'll be able to understand some of the key concepts of the present time that we are in pop culture and postmodernism, and some of the salient elements of these current times. And so that, that will give us a perspective to be able to address the issues when the need would arise. All right. So we'll be examining context of self. I'll just go on one after the other, and go on until the end. So different sections and subheadings until we conclude. Okay. Now let's look into, first of all, the awesome. Thank you. So the first thing that we're considering today is self, the context of self, and what do we mean by self, right? This is defined by Carl Truman, and I think I forgot to. I'll mention this now as an introduction. I'll be mentioning some materials that I would recommend. I think I usually do this, recommending some materials for us, maybe to read up after this session, or to just look into. Right, and as defined by, so keep an eye open for that, an ear open for that, and please note them down so that you'd look into them. So, as defined by Carl Truman. Carl Truman is the author of The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self, and that book, right, did quite justice to understanding the concept of self in the modern day, and understanding some of the salient issues, especially with things such as the LGBTQ plus community, sexual revolution, and Christianity and the context of self. So I think that book is worth checking out. The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self by Carl Truman, Carl, True and Man, in one word, Trueman. So Carl Truman defines self, which is the context of what we're talking about now, not just as not just okay, let me put it like this. It defines self, and I will go on, as how I perceive, in I'm paraphrasing now, how somebody perceives his identity, his purpose, or the things that makes him or her happy. And I know that there is an idea that we have of self, in that it is what differentiates me from another person, in that, so everybody knows that, so we are like a number on this call right now, and everybody knows this person is different from this person. So the idea of self that we have ordinarily is that of differentiation, of individuality. So we are like eight selves, right, on this call right now, and this person, Olushaya, for example, is different from Yaniolua. But that is one idea of self, and that is not wrong, right? But in the context of our discourse, and which was the context of the writings of Carl Truman, in understanding, the current society as you're doing right now, is basically self is that entity is encapsulated or summed up or accumulated up in the idea of what is a person's individual or internal identity, what the person perceives to be his purpose, what the person perceives to give him or her happiness, right? And not just mere individuality. Do we get this? And guys, please respond to me if I ask questions like, do you get this? I will follow me. I want to know. All right. Do we get this? So self is in that form of identifying my identity, purpose, the things that make me happy, the things that bring fulfillment to me. Okay. And this idea or the context of self and how it is interpreted has shifted rapidly over the years, has shifted rapidly. When I say over the years, like right from the inception, or right from the inception of mankind and its civilization, right? The context of how human beings perceive themselves, perceive their identity and purpose has shifted, or the things that bring them fulfillment in life has shifted rapidly over the years. And this shift, and the result of this shift as at today, is responsible for many things that are going to be discussed today, and many things that have been expressed in the sexuality, understanding of morals, and what is right and what is not. And so that is why it is important that we understand, that we look into the trend of the or the pattern or the evolution of the self, right, as we have defined it, and to see where it is right now as of today, and how it influences other things. And permit me to say something, just to express why it is important that we are looking into self, right? One thing to understand is that, see, we may be tempted to say, and as Christians, it is easy for us to say, which is true, and what I'm about to say is not wrong. It is very true, right? But it is tempting to say that the reason for all of the things that are happening in the world right now, the sexual revolution, LGBTQ plus community, the relativism that we see, is because of sin, right? Is merely because of sin, and this is true, right? It is because of sin. However, it is how do I say this? It is because of sin, right? But it is also as a result of some other details under the umbrella of sin. So it is a result of sin in the umbrella, sin in the general sense of it. I think that's what I was looking for. Sin is the general cause, it's the umbrella of everything, yeah. But there is a reason why sin has always been the reason for the heals and sexual revolution and everything has been in humanity. But there are some other salient points which self and a bit of technology and advancing civilization contributes to it. There are other things that makes it different from how it was in the past. Let me say this to explain what I've been saying. So when we look at history, right, when we look at human civilization and societies right from the inception of time, or right from the inception of humanity, right, we would see that things that are seen to be, they just came up in this age, which did not actually really just come up in this age, like homosexuality, pornography, sex outside the bounds of marriage, what we call fornication in Christian, in for us Christians, right, or adultery, as the case may be. All of these things before had been since throughout human history. We've seen homosexuality in play, we've seen pornography in play. Even before technology came to be, there were forms of pornography, there was sex outside of marriages, and all of this thing. But there's a difference between that and between what we had, in history at that time and what we have now, right? There is a, how to explain this? There is a trend of shift, or there's a shift that has happened between then and now. So the way homosexuality and pornography were, in ancient history, those things were considered to be shameful and not to be expressed outwardly. So people who engaged were doing pornography, also who were homosexuals, the general public, the society considered, or at least the majority considered it immoral, and those things were things of shame. But today it is being normalized, right? So if sin was responsible for homosexuality then, and sin is still responsible for homosexuality now, there are some details that will probably be missing, and that is why self, or the evolution of self and its perception of what gives us human beings our identity, is one of the things that contributes to it. And that is why we're looking as the concept of the self and its evolution. Now, so going back to Carl Truman, his book, The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self, as I recommend Carl Truman, he quoted another author, Rief. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Rieff. And Rief also did quite a good work on highlighting the evolution of self in throughout human history, how man has perceived himself right? How man has perceived his value, his purpose, his identity, the things that should and brings him fulfillment over the years, right? And up to date, how we as human beings in today's present age of postmodernism and relativism, right? Or pop culture, let me just sum it up like that, considering ourselves and values. Right, so Reef, Truman quoting Reef now, highlighted the list of, the political, I'm going ahead of myself, the list of the advancement, understanding the advancement of how we have perceived ourselves right from the start of time. So, it's categorized, there are four classes in the evolution of self, which is the political man, the religious man, economic man, and the psychological man. The psychological one is the last one, right? So there's the political man, the religious man, in order like that, in succession. Political man, religious man, economic man, and psychological man, right? And they have progressed from one to the other in the same in the same manner. So the political man was the first, kind of man, in the society, a civilization, came to be. And, in this kind of age, the people, when I say political man, people often got their identity, their sense of fulfillment, what gives them happiness and purpose, right, from the things that they engage in, from engaging in things as covering the or attending congress meetings, political meetings in the society, engaging in, of course, their political rights, engaging in political discussions, on all of those things. That was the norm, and it was in those political activities that the political man, or the, should I say, in this kind of era, in this kind of stage of civilization, it was in engaging in political activities that people actually got their intrinsic value and purpose, right? It was engaging in this kinds of activities, engaging in, as I said, attending congress meetings and all of those political things, right? This was how they got their identity and their sense of fulfillment. So, okay, let me just go on. I don't want to go ahead of myself, so I'll keep some things to say till when it is time. So, keep that in mind for the political man. He engages in political activities, and it is from those things that he gains his identity and sense of fulfillment, right? And so there comes the next man, which is the religious man. And as the implied, you can already guess what this man is about. He gets a sense of fulfillment from engaging in religious activities, attending masses, right? Going to what we call church or the cathedrals today, participating in, the activities of the church, all of those things. And actually, there was a time in history where Christian values were the mainstream. I think I said this in our last, yeah, I said this in our last session of TDS, that there was time, especially in Europe and even America, right, that default religion, if anyone on the street just walk up to them, what is your religion? They will say Christianity, right? There was a time in history like that. And so, this this era of the religious man point, shows us that there was actually a time like that in which people would, find their sense of fulfillment in engaging, in engaging in religious activities, attending masses, performing all their rites, and all of those things. And then there came another kind of man, which is called the economic man. You can already guess what this guy finds a sense of fulfillment from engaging in things, getting a good job, having, being able to provide for his family, having the bag, the fluid, right? Having some sort of economic significance in the society. So he got his fulfillment from engaging in economic activities, right? And just being able to take care of himself and his family, provide clothing and shelter for his family. This was economic man. So the economic time came, and this was how people got their sense of identity, their sense of purpose, their sense of being and fulfillment. And then they came the last one, which is still prevalent today. It's called the psychological man. Now, this man, okay, what does I, political man, religious man, economic man, they were quite, obvious in their names. But then psychological man, who is this guy? What does this guy do for a living? You know, I don't mind. What can we say concerning this man? This guy, now, you when you look at all of the categories or the stages of the evolution of the self, political man, religious man, economic man that we have looked at, all of them have one thing in common, or three of them have, or three stages have one thing in common. Everybody looked outwards in finding themselves, or in understanding or defining themselves. Let me put it like that. Everybody looked outward, but in the outward activities to define what would give them fulfillment. So attending mass, or attending congress meetings, or having being able to provide for your family, is what their outward activities that give them fulfillment, identity, and purpose. However, it is the opposite for the psychological man. The psychological man does not look outward. The psychological man looks inward. The psychological man looks inward to think, okay, I am going to, it is not about how I am able to do this or how I'm able to do that. The psychological man sums his identity, or his self, or derives his identity and his self and fulfillment from the things that happen in his internal psychology. So if I feel or think this way, then my identity is gotten not from the things that I engage with outward, but I'm looking inward at my inner psychology, the way I think, the way I feel, the way I perceive the world to be. And it is in those things that are rooted my it is in those things that are rooted my identity, my purpose, and sense of fulfillment. Now, this can have its form of different kinds of effects, and maybe benefits or consequences, at some point, because a lot of our fathers or our parents or grandparents, right, kind of belong in one form or way, right, to some of these, kind of men, right? Particularly, maybe many of us, especially in this generation, many of our parents probably belong to the economic men. Even if at the time of their existence, psychological man also has already started to, develop, right? Millennial, even baby boomers, their generation, right? Gen X and Gen Y. But they had their own they had the understanding that sense of fulfillment or self for many of them would be from the external activities, and that is why many of so let me give an example now. A lot of our generation would think, if I ask this example, or if I ask this question now, so if I ask this question now, maybe let's do an experiment now for everybody. Maybe use the chat section. If I ask you, so some people here that are working, and I think many people are students. If I ask you, does your work, or this won't apply to students, but just imagine you're working, right? Does your work give you fulfillment? Now think about that question. Does your work give you fulfillment? Right. Now take that question and answer it in your mind. Just assume you are working. I know a lot of people here have corporate experience, as I'm looking at people here. If you're a student, just imagine it, right? Does your work give you fulfillment? Now notice the answer that whatever the answer that you think up in your mind is not in the context of um it's okay. It is whatever question, whatever answer will come up in your mind is in the context of that. Oh, are the day-to-day activities that I engage with in my work, does it make me happy? Do I like, for example, if my work engages, for example, right, entails, get emails and then get emails all the time. I have to go through emails and respond and call people and all of those things. Do those day-to-day activities make me happy? Do I like it? Am I right? Guys, talk to me. Is that not, and of course it might the details might differ from one person to the other. But like that was probably what came to your mind, right? Are the day-to-day activities of my job making me happy or giving me a sense of fulfillment? I'm waiting for your responses of giving me fulfillment, right? But and of course, maybe are your studies making you happy as well? But then if you ask this question to an economic man or to somebody that was in the economy in that era and had the idea of himself, his answer would not be dependent on the day-to-day activities. You guys are not responding. Do you get what I'm saying? I want to know if you are following. All right, Candy says yes. Naomi says yes. So if okay, Kofu is following. So thank you. So the answers will not be dependent on the thank you and man of God. The answers will not be dependent on the day-to-day activities of that man. The answers will be dependent on, am I able to provide for my family? Am I able, does my family have food to eat? Do they have clothes to wear? That is what would be on his mind, and not, oh, do I like responding to emails? Do I like talking to people over the phone? Do we see how that has shifted now? And so, when somebody asks what gives you fulfillment, he might not be able to comprehend that this is the way we are thinking, because his idea of self for him is what I do outwardly. Does my family have food to eat? Does my family have does my family have food to eat? Do the members of my family have clothes to wear? Do we get the gist now? I think it explains how things have shifted in the understanding of self. Yeah, are you getting the gist? I want you to talk to me. This comment section is dry. I want you guys to talk to me. Do we understand how things have shifted in the context of man? And that is why it will seem as if generations after us have a lot of understanding will need to come to how a lot of things have happened then and how a lot of things are happening now. Thank you guys for responding. How a lot of things are happening now, and it could be a good thing or a bad thing, right? In the sense that a lot of us would agree that a lot of older generations had issues with their mental health, or they ignored it. They probably don't even know what mental health meant. Are you guys what I'm saying? And these are the things that are contribute. So it might be a good thing for us now that many of us are psychological men, whether you want to agree or not. It might be a good thing for us. But then there is a stretching that has happened. We have stretched it. So in an attempt to keep one psychology or the internal psychology and pay attention to what might be helpful to us, we are now neglecting the truth. We are now making what our internal psychology is, as with the psychological man, to be the arbiter of truth, to be the ground and mainstay of truth. That if I see it as black, regardless of whether it is objectively red, if my eyes is seeing black, or even if my eyes is not seeing, but if I interpret it as black, then it must be black. That is how we have stretched it. That is how we have stretched it. So it could be a good thing or a bad thing. Mostly has been a bad thing. All right. But then, so Carl Truman in his book, again, for people that are just joining, I recommended the book. And we're looking at the context of self, explaining the ills or the aspect of our culture as part of the pop culture, right? Of how we view truth, morality, and what role does the Bible play? And we'll talk about the other things as well. So let's just continue. So I recommended the book by Carl Truman, The Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self. I think it's a great book to give on the perspective of self. I think you should check it out. Great book. Right. So Carl Truman goes on to say that, we might even say, for the psychological man, they lead to a prioritization of the individual's inner psychology. As I said, we might even say feelings or intuitions or form a sense of who we are and what the purpose of our life is. And this is responsible for many things in the world, like transgenderism. People think it doesn't matter what my biology is telling me. It doesn't matter you know what the organs of my body is telling me. If I feel like I am a man, then I am a man. And for many of these people, their inner psychological convictions or their inner psychological feelings and thoughts and intuitions are absolutely decisive of who they are, absolutely decisive of their identity. So, they now come out in quotes to say that, I'm really a man trapped in the body of a lady, things like that. Why? Because they feel like a man, right? So it's now drops the idea of what actually is objectively true, what actually is your biology saying, to say, okay, this is how I feel and this is how it is with me. I am a man, even though I have XX chromosomes. You get what I mean? So, that is one of the effects of the evolution or the trend in which the modern self or the understanding of identity has come to be. That is one of the effects that he has come to pose to us. So is you know is happiness found in directing oneself outward or inward? Right. I think I mentioned this briefly. The economic man, all of them looked outward. Psychological man is looking inward. Right. And I gave the example of job satisfaction so that I would understand. I think that was a good example, right? Did that help us understand what I was trying to say? This is the point where I use the chat section, guys. Did that help us understand what I was trying to explain? So that's beautiful. Thank you. So that gives us an idea, of the self and its evolution up till today. So the modern sexual revolution, or the evolution of self up to today, is a distinctive is sorry, my God, is distinctive in its way that it has normalized many of the things that people are feeling, whether or not they are objectively or considered to be objectively or inherently good or bad. Right. And of course, as I said, many things have contributed to the normalization. First of all, is the evolution of self, which we just explained. And another thing is evolution of technology as well. So it was easier. It is now easier to engage in pornography today, right? You don't even in fact today don't even have to go to pornography sites. It's on social media sites, social media, Instagram, Twitter, the likes of those as well, right? So it's easy to access. Abortion, no, let me not go to abortion. Fornication, sex out of marriage, is easier to do today. Why? Because there is, centuries ago, if you want to engage in sex out of marriage, you would fear, oh, what if the person gets pregnant? What if I get STI? But today, there are contraceptives. You don't have to worry about pregnancy anymore. There are condoms. You don't have to worry about STIs anymore, right? Even if you get pregnant, there is now abortion and safer ways to do it. So, technology has also contributed to how easy and how it is easier to normalize this. So if we are now in a generation that people prioritize their feelings and their inner psychology over what should be objectively or inherently good or bad, right? It is, and they are being equipped by things other than, what is supposed to equip them. They are being equipped by, technology and the advancement in science and technological development so it is easier for them to be able to say, heck, what the heck is good or bad, and then do their own thing. You get. And so because of this, because their inner psychology and the things that enable their inner psychology to be acted out, we are now, there is a tendency that we now reject other realities of biology, of morals, right, or redefine them, right? As many people are redefining gender now, redefine or reject either of the two. And find or reject other realities like biology, religion, morals, and all of those things. So there's an example of a story that I know, someone close to me. This person is saved now, right? And good in the word, praise God. But then, she was telling me that, this person was sharing the story with me that there was a time, like I know the story of how she got saved, right? And I know how and when it happened. Like I know the story of when it happened, right? And then I was talking to her one time, and then she was just telling me and explaining all of the things that she was doing, or she had ideas to do, or she was doing before she got saved. And now at some point in her, because she attended a secondary school, a in quotes Christian secondary school, a seminary school, as it were. That's what they call the school, sha, right? But they always preached about God to them. They always preached about God to them. Um, they always preached about God to them, told them about hell and all of this. So she was very afraid of God and hell. She did not want to go to hell. But then she still had tendencies and temptations to do many of the things that she was doing. And so she said she got to a point that was like, maybe this God thing is not real. What was she doing there? I feel like this, right? And so if I want to continue this way, I must reject the one thing that is almost keeping me back. God must not be real. Guys, do we get the gist of what I'm saying now? How that kind of psychology and the things that can enable it would lead us to reject reality that are looking us in the face. Right. So to just give her that leeway to do whatever she wanted to do. Thank God she's saved now. You know, like maybe God is not really big, and going on with thank you, Ifeoluwaseun, for responding. You have cold. I'll say anything. Some people don't know that I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking. All right. So that. So understanding that would be able to equip us to understand and how to answer, or how to engage, or engage right the salient topics that we'll be considering next. So the next thing that we're considering, I hope we understand self now and the evolution and how it is important that we're even considering that today. Right. I hope we get it now. So it is important now to consider what I titled morality and where it came from. Morality and where it came from. Thank you for your watch. Morality and where it came from. I think I said this in the first session of the defense series, giving an argument for God, right? Which is called the moral argument. If God exists, if there are morals, then there has to be a God and all of those. But we are looking at, almost the same perspective, but maybe a deeper sense of it today. So let's establish one thing. If there are laws, excuse me, quite gas it tonight. There are laws and they do not come by themselves, right? If there are laws, right, talking generally now, they have to come from a lawgiver, right? So laws come from a lawgiver, isn't that right? And so the same thing applies with moral laws. Moral laws have to come from a moral lawgiver. Are you with me now, guys? Moral laws have to come from a moral lawgiver. And so, let's continue. So we have said laws come from a lawgiver. The same thing applies to moral laws have to come from a moral lawgiver. Now let's take it up a notch now. If there are objective moral laws, they have to come from an objective moral lawgiver, right? If there are objective moral laws, they have to come from objective moral lawgiver. So it is important that we now look into the arguments that are there really objective moral laws. A lot of people, particularly, particularly atheists, right, argue that there are no objective moral laws and morals or morality or moral laws are subject to the consensus of a society at a particular time. So the popular census of whatever is considered good or bad in a community is what is moral and what is the moral law for that community at that time, right? And this sounds like might be true because we've seen a lot of things changing over the history, over the time, and things, as we've said already now, a lot of things have been normalized now. But then it is a little bit of a problem because whatever I think is good or bad does not mean that it is inherently good or bad. When I say inherently good, like looking at it, inherently, and I'll give an example so that will explain. Looking at inherently in the intrinsic value of that action, is it generally good or bad? Right. So whatever I think of it to be doesn't necessarily doesn't necessarily um say whether it is inherently good or bad. That's one. Second thing, second thing is that there have actually been, excuse me, there have actually been an evaluation to understand the psychology of man and to show that actually every a lot of us as human beings, if not all of us, have an idea of what we agree to be inherently good or bad. And it has been so, for example, every person on earth, well, almost everybody, right? But a lot of us here right now, right? All of us here right now will agree that it was wrong. In fact, a lot of people today, all those people that are saying that it's subjective would agree that it is wrong to have slaves and treat them inhumanely, like it was done during the slave trade. So the slave trade, we remember now the colonial period, right? They would take people as slaves, treat them very, very inhumanely, very gory sights, maltreat them a lot. I said, and it was very common. But it was common to have slaves. It was common to have black people as slaves, and they treated inhumanely. I guess what I'm saying. Now, even though it was popular then, if you ask somebody today, does that mean it was good at that time, even though it was popular and it was normalized? Of course, the answer we would get is no. Do you get? The answer that we would get at that time is no, and it is not because we are looking at slave trade has been abolished, da 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 da, today. Um, no, that is not why we are answering no, because even if you are looking in the lens of you at that time having a slave, or there is an inherent understanding, a subtle understanding in the hearts and minds of everyone that what I'm doing is probably not good. But because it is normalized or popular, doesn't make it to be inherently good or bad. I hope you understand what I'm saying. Am I making sense, guys? Does not mean that it's inherently good or bad. Why? Because we think it is wrong, not because we think it is wrong, not because it was popular, right? But because it is not objectively right. It is wrong to treat humans that have intrinsic value that way. I guess what I'm saying. Not because you belong to that time and then it was popular, or you belong to now and the slavery is not popular anymore. So because it's not popular anymore, we cannot say it is wrong. Right. Thank you, Shaya. You can now say it is wrong. No, but because we understand that human beings have intrinsic value, and that has been since human history, and they should not be treated that way. And of course, in an atheistic argument, God does not exist, therefore there are no morals, and there is no value to human life. There is no right or wrong. There is no purpose. There is nothing. Right. But then, if there has been, an evidence that show that there seems to be in the minds of everybody something that is, an understanding of value, intrinsic value, and understanding of what is right or wrong, then they have to come from a moral lawgiver, right? And if there's a moral lawgiver, if God exists, then there has to be value to human life. There has to be objective morality. There has to be objective moral, right or wrong. There has to be purpose, and all of these things. Do you sharing gets me? Are we getting this? There has to be all of these things. Has to be. Now, but the fact so, um, yeah, as I said, if there seems to be an objective code of good or bad, whether we accept it or not, shows that there has to be someone in charge of deciding what is good or bad, or a moral lawgiver, and that moral lawgiver would be God. And the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy even wrote a paper showing that there probably has to be the fact that human beings are aware of moral fact. And then they wrote something, and I quote, however, the fact that we humans are aware of moral facts is itself surprising and calls for an explanation. And of course, if now this is me talking, I've ended their quote. Of course, if we trace that, the explanation would be, as I said, a moral lawgiver. And I will guess what I'm saying. And let me continue quoting them again. Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. I think I've given an example. This is an example. They said, for example, it is obviously contingent that it is wrong to drop an atomic bomb on Hiroshima, right? During after this was after the Second World War and all of those things. Do we get this? So if We have seen from human psychology that morals are objective and not subjective society. The morals have to come from God. And so there is what is objectively good and what is objectively bad. Do we get it? Now let's go to truth and its absoluteness. Please stay with me. Where, as I said from the beginning, that I segmented this session into sessions and they come one in succession, right? So that one would lead to the other, and then we're able to identify or understand some of the salient concepts to be able to address salient issues today. All right, do we get it? Do we get it? Now, as I said, we'll now observe what truth and its absoluteness is. Is there truth? Does truth exist? If there's truth, is it relative truth or absolute truth? For example, if I say, oh, your truth, my truth. So we're talking about something, I am Tega, for example. Hi, Tega, by the way. We're talking about something, for example, and I say, so I am Tega are disagreeing on a certain idea. And then how I do, man of God. And then I say that, oh, Tega, that's just your truth. I don't agree with you. So just say your truth, my truth. But it doesn't actually conjure up an idea because and which I would explain. Truth is truth no matter what our perspective is. So if I and Tega, for example, as I give the example, if I and Tega are having a conversation and then there's a disagreement, there has to be one person that is wrong or both of us are wrong. It's either one person is wrong and the other person is right, or both of us are wrong. We cannot both be saying the truth if we are saying different things. Are you getting? Because which I would explain, with some statement, and I heard this from Dr. Van Turek, great apologist, you know, and he gave this example. So, for example, people say, and let's look at these statements together. Truth does not exist. That's a statement. A lot of people say that, oh, truth does not exist. There's no such thing as truth. But then there's a problem with these statements in the sense that it defeats itself. Why? Because truth does not exist is a statement that is assuming to be true. Guys, I guess what I'm saying. The statement truth does not exist. The person that is saying it expects us to accept that as truth. So what do we say to that person? He said truth does not exist. Is that true? Is it true that truth does not exist? If that is true, then truth exists because what you just said is to be assumed to be true. Are we getting what I'm saying? So does truth exist? Yes. Right. Because the statement saying truth does not exist is self-defeating because it has to be true. And if that is true, then truth exists. So it's self-defeating. Some other people say, oh, truth is relative. So, as I said, what is true for me might not be true for Tega. Truth is relative. What question do we ask that person? Is that true for everybody? Is the fact that truth is relative true for everybody? If you say, oh, yeah, it's a universal truth, then that means that's an absolute truth. And so truth is not relative. Right? So I don't know let's assume that I have a shirt right on. I do have a shirt on, by the way. Right? None of you are seeing me right now because my video is not on. So you don't know the color of the shirt I'm wearing. So regardless of what Edgar thinks my shirt is, or what Shayo thinks the color of my shirt is, it doesn't matter what you guys think. What the color of my shirt is what the color of my shirt is. Do you get? And that is the truth. That is what is true concerning my shirt. So if Shayo says, oh, I feel like your shirt might be red. It's not red, by the way. It's not true. Regardless of what she thinks or what she feels it is. If Moshe says, oh, I feel like your shirt is blue, it is not blue. That is not true. What is only true is what is the actual color of my shirt. Guys, I guess what I'm saying. And the same thing, it is true for you, but not for me. Is that true for everybody? Yeah, but that's true for you, but not for me. Yeah, being true for you or not for you, is it true for everybody, right? So these statements are self-defeating. And what does it lead us to? Truth is absolute. Truth is absolute. We might have different perspective of it. We might have different opinions on it. We might have different feelings about it, but it doesn't change the intrinsic value of the truth. right? What is true concerning whatever it is that we have different opinions, ideas, or feelings about does not change. So truth exists. Now, coming and boiling down to to the idea of what we have in today's pop culture, postmodernism, relativism, and we'll just oppose that with scriptures and compare. Is so what does the self see? How do we have seen how self has evolved and how it has come to today to play today, in our interpretation of what is our identity, what is good or bad, what is moral and not moral, how we are rejecting some uh, uh, um how we are rejecting some absolute realities because of this, right? And what is I was going to say? Yeah, we've looked at how morals are objective. Where do they come from? Morals come from God, right? Morals are defined by a moral lawgiver. Moral laws are given by a moral lawgiver, right? And then truth is absolute. Truth is not what I think is true, what you think is true. Not everybody is correct, even though we are believing the same thing. No, right? Truth is absolute. Morality is absolute, and we understand how ourself is. So that boils down to be able to explain what today's pop culture in postmodernism and relativism is. So relativism by definition is, having an understanding that everything is relative, truth is relative, right? So it's whatever you feel, whatever you believe is true is what is true. Whatever you feel is right is what is right. Follow your heart and all of those ideas. And we already see how problematic that ideology is, right? I've having an understanding of self, morality, having an understanding of truth and its absoluteness. We already see how problematic relativism is. And there's another thing, postmodernism, right? Postmodernism means in different contexts means different things, right? But then one idea that whatever context it is defined in, it could be defined in the context of art, music, and also sociology and inner psychology. But regardless of the context in which postmodernism is defined, every one of those things have one idea that unifies them, and that is the idea of rejecting traditional views or ideologies. So when, for example, art, right, ART, of the postmodern age started, that's when, I think modernism and then postmodernism, that's when the concept of abstract art started coming up. Rejecting people now draw rubbish and call it art, right? Pardon me, right? It is art. It is art. Let me not offend people. Right. That that is, they developed that, and also going into inner psychology and all of those things. So what ties everything in under postmodernism together is the idea that, rejecting traditional views and ideologies or paradigms of doing things, right? And we see where the problem could go, because if you reject traditional, and it's not, it's really not a bad thing to deconstruct. That is another, some of the actions that happen under postmodernism. It's not a bad thing to deconstruct. If you are deconstructing from what you can see you're objectively wrong to what is objectively right by your own evolution. But however, we see that the context of postmodernism and deconstructing is moving not from what is objectively wrong, but to what is objectively right, but moving from what is tradition to what I feel is true. This is how I feel internally, and so this is what must be true for me. Did we get this gist? This is how I feel internally, and this is what must be true for me. And that is what we have seen under postmodernism altogether. And then there's another one, and there's another one that hits home closer to Christianity, and which is called progressive Christianity. Now, I've heard progressive Christianity for quite a while now, and I didn't know that I've gotten to the state that they got to, because as I was preparing for this session, I saw some things that my mouth was ajar. I was like, eh? I was on their site. I didn't know that they even had this. I didn't know that progressive Christianity had been so organized, right? I just thought, it was a concept. But then there's progressivechristianity.org, right? So they are organized, and then I was on that website, and I was reading one of the articles, and they were making a case for Satan, for Lucifer, saying things that, oh, he's really a nice guy, he's just often misinterpreted. Like with, and it's not like they are not saying the way, if you read the article, right? It was not in the way that I'm trying to say it now, articulated speech, text, and all of the making a case for Satan. It was, often misinterpreted or misunderstood. The account of Adam and Eve. Satan did not actually mean that they will go to hell. Da, 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 da. Now it's sounding ridiculous the way I'm saying it. I'm not saying it well, just so that you understand how good their textual writing was. And even the context of, but this is if you break it down, this was the idea that they were communicating. The context of the temptation of Jesus, Satan was also misunderstood. That was not what he was just pointing out truth and all of those things. And I kid you not, it shocked me. I was surprised because I understood that progressive Christianity was a thing, right? But I didn't know that they don't reach that geze. You get what I guess what I'm saying, And why am I saying this? This is also, something in our, and of course we oh my god, it is not a normal thing. That is sponsored. That one is sponsored. If you know what I'm saying, that one is sponsored. But now let me consider what I was saying. Like, I'm saying all of this so that we'd understand, of course, we've identified what truth is, identify how the self is now. The all of the things that are boiled down to what we have today in relativism, postmodernism, and even progressive Christianity. And progressive Christianity, by the way, just so that I think I didn't give a definition for that, is, as the name implies, progressing from tradition, also an offshoot from, a little bit from postmodernism, living tradition of Christianity and progressing into whatever it is that they are progressing into. So progressive Christianity will say things like gaining new revelation, and it has many, it mingles with a lot of other things. It mingles with a lot of other things, with sexual revolution as well. So you hear things like there's a Queen James Bible. Yes, you have King James version. Now there's QJV, there's Queen James, there's Queen James Bible, you know so that it contains of things that affirms the LGBTQ community, or affirms same-sex attraction, and I will still talk about that lastly, in details, and how Christians can engage that or approach that and all of that. you know um there's the Queen James Bible, and they want you to know that Bible is still the word of God. There is also a queer King James, QKJV, right? And all of those, there are different kinds of scriptures that progressive Christianity has produced, just so that we'll be able to, as I said, reject the reality of what is tradition and redefine it to adopt what we feel or what we have seen internally to be what is consistent with our desires or feelings, right? And of course, when even if you did not know the truth, let's say you were not Christian before, you never had an understanding of, you know, how was God's will and all of those things. But then you look at what Christianity has always told, the context and the writings of the original manuscript of scripture, right? Right from when it was written, first century AD, of the New Testament, and thousands of century BC, or for the Old Testament for most of them, right? Or from yeah, most mm, for many of them. Not all of them were in thousands before Christ, for a number of them. So, you look at that, you'll be able to tell, if do your research, you'll be able to tell the objective idea of what the scripture is actually hey, English, conveying, right? Trying to communicate, right? We would see the objective idea and know what is being told us today by the likes of by the likes of um by the likes of progressive Christianity. And of course, it is important that we know these things, right? And so the standard of, if what they wrote at the beginning of Christianity is what they wrote, then that is what should be true. And that is what we should not progress into what is not. Having an understanding that progressive Christianity is not Christianity. Christianity is an orthodox faith. What does that mean? We stick to what the apostles and Jesus himself has taught. And if we are able to discern the things that Jesus and his apostles have taught, then we stick to it. We don't progress into what will carry us go where we don't know. That's what I'm saying. We don't progress. So progressive Christianity is not Christianity at all. I'll say that one more time. Progressive Christianity is not Christianity at all. Why? Because it differs from the lines and prospects or the teachings and perspective of Orthodox traditional Christianity. And of course, we know that postmodernism, relativism, all of these things are progressing away from what is tradition, but that cannot be true with Christianity because scriptures, as was written by the apostles and written by the people before Jesus, is objective and true and binding on all believers, regardless of which age you are reading it from. Ah, my God. Are you guys getting this? Regardless of when in the world, what time of the world you are reading it. Right. So, progressive Christianity is not Christianity at all. So, I've explained it has been, an explanation of what is self, the evolution of self. We're going towards the one of the last stages, evolution of self. What else are we spoken about? Let me see if you guys are following. We're spoken about like three more topics, including what we just concluded now. Just mention one. Evolution of self was the first thing. We spoke about truth. I'm helping you guys now because of time, but I still want to see it in the comment section, right? Truth and its absoluteness. You guys are not typing. Morals or morality and where it comes from. Morals are objective and they come from God. If there are objective moral laws, they come from an objective moral lawgiver. You guys are not responding to me. Are you guys following me like this? And all of these things boil down and accumulate into relativism, pop culture, as it were today, and postmodernism, and progressive Christianity, as I said. Now, understanding that, let's move to the next idea that we'll be talking about and discussing tonight, and that is the community, the LGBTQ plus community. Now that community, as the name implies, involves the people who have identified themselves away from the or inspire themselves with other sexual orientations like lesbianism, homosexual, gay relationship, bisexual, transgender, queer, you know asexual, and whatever, all of the sexual orientations that exist today. And so that I will not give a straw man argument or a straw man perspective of, so that it will not seem as if I'm bad mouthing. And that's the thing, it seems as hate when there's a disagreement with the feelings and actions of this community, but really not, right? So it's not a communication of hate. In case there's any member of the community that's going to listen to this, it's not a communication of hate at all, right? It's just trying to understand what truth is and how it is that the church can help. Okay, right. So in an attempt to not give a strong man argument or to sound like let me affirm some things first, or can I say affirm, right? Let me just establish some things first, right? That in all honesty, from interactions and checking of the communication with people from that community and people who have come from that community even into the Christian faith, it would be unfair, right? It is not an idea that we say, oh, they are just making it up, right? These are actually natural attractions. Just natural attractions, and attractions that and feelings that they actually engage. These things are real. I think that's just what I want to say, right? They are real attractions. Man can be looking at a man, just like many of us here might have heterosexual sex attraction to people of the opposite sex. It's the same way as real as that is for us. It's the same way that is for them, right? So establishing this so that we have an idea that I'm not saying this with an understanding that, oh, I don't know. I think it's just, oh, they are making it up, because many of us have thought like that at one point. Some people might still think like that, right? But these things are real. right? They are real and genuine desires and attractions. So this is not in any way to invalidate the desires or attractions of any member of that community. But establishing that these things are real, these things are true, these things are happening. It is happening, right? They are happening. However, despite the fact, they are happening, it doesn't our desires do not, as we've already established, our desires do not really tell what is, because we feel it does not mean it is necessarily right, right? And we know where right or wrong comes from already, right? And we know what's right or wrong comes from, where right or wrong comes from already, right? But then these things are serial, and they are happening even if we members of church or people who want to be members of the church, or because this thing, oh, there's a community where I want to be a member to, but they don't agree or affirm how I feel. And we'll speak about how that could be limiting for some people, or how that is limiting some people in joining the church or staying in the church, and how believers can help as God will help us. Amen. So let's look at it. Let's look at it. So there are some things that are common. There are some ideas. We look at a few of them that are common with the LGBTQ plus community, which would address and see how credible those ideas are. And one of the major ones is that they ascribe their identity with their sexuality. All right. So number one is that they say, "Oh, I identify who I am just because of my sexuality." So if I have, or of my sexual orientation, or my sexual, let me put it this way, of my sexual attraction or sexual feelings. So if I have an attraction towards men, for example, right, then my identity is based off on that entirely, in its entirety, right? So and so it appears that it is an issue when is a person now comes to say, "Oh, I think this is wrong." So to be, no, not saying that you do, because it's a natural thing that you are going through and experiencing same-sex attraction and all of those things. But then carrying it out is wrong, not because I'm saying so, but the objective moral lawgiver says so, right? As we've already established, it's to them, saying that gives off the fact that, oh, you are attacking who I am, and then you are attacking my identity. Do we get the gist now? That's why it seems that they are very agitated or resistive to anything that doesn't affirm their identity or actions, in quotes. Do you get? And so the ideology is based off that, see, my sexuality is who I am. But then there's a separation that has to be done with feelings and identity, right? But of course, we know that is the state of the psychological man. But there has to be that separation from what I feel and who I am. They are two different things. They are um different things, right? Or should I say, your feeling or your sexuality is not the entirety of your identity. I think I'll put it like that. Your sexuality cannot be the entirety of your identity. Even if you say, okay, it is a part of it, we can agree, but it cannot be the entirety of your identity. But this is what the community has based identity off on, and that is why there is a problem. All right, that is why there is a problem. So there is a need that we understand and advise and advocate that, see, there's more to your identity than your sexuality, and if there's an understanding of it, the problem begins to reduce by a significant amount. Another thing is, you know, that they affirm strongly is that I was born like this. I was born like this. That could be right in a context, right? So the context that many people say it is, and I'll say the context in which it is right. The context that many people say it is that there probably is some biological wiring to my sexual orientation. So in the sense that, oh, maybe I have a gene or in my DNA. When I say DNA, I mean like physical, biological, scientifically detect their detectable DNA. There is a gene, there is a gay gene that I carry. And that's not true. Scientifically proven, there has never been found a gay gene in anybody. All right. There's never been found. So So the argument in that context is not true, right? There is no scientific or makeup in the body of any man that is responsible for their gayness, or their response, or is responsible for their orientation sexually. There isn't. There isn't any. But in the context that I say it could be true is in what, I think it was Dr. Frantirek that said this, that everybody was born with an orientation to do something bad. It might be, the expressions might be different, So in that context, it might be true. It is true that you were born that way. Everybody was born with that orientation to do something bad. So even if I am an heterosexual male, and and of course, what is bad is in the context of what is objectively true, what is objectively moral from the objective moral lawgiver, which is God, right? So I have, I was born with the orientation to do something, but it might not be expressed in my sexuality as bad, but it's expressed in another way. So everybody on earth is expressed, is born with an orientation to do something bad. So in that context, it is true. But in the context of, it is scientifically embedded in my DNA, it is not. And the difference, it is different because one gives an idea that it is immutable. I can't change it. I was born this way. I must remain this way. The other gives, okay, yeah, everybody was born with an intention to do something bad, but you can't be born again. Or let me put it like this: it can be changed, right? That intention can indeed be changed, as we can see. Glory to God, as we can see that. So that's the difference between the two. And then another ideology, I think I'll start to move fast now because time is running. Another ideology is to um the ideology that I love you, then I must affirm all things that you do. So love affirms all things, or love accepts all things. So the fact that I don't affirm or agree with your actions, and or I don't affirm. When I say affirm, I mean I don't celebrate your sexuality as you would now says, oh, I definitely hate you, or I am bigoted. Do you get the gist now? And this ideology is also common and that's why they might be hostile to and see a lot of people who do not affirm their orientation as immoral, or see them as unloving. So if you love me, you must affirm me, you must accept me, you must celebrate me. But that's not true. If I love you, but sometimes because of my love, I would hold back my affirmation because you are doing something that would harm you and probably harm others as well. You get the gist, right? So love affirms all things. That's not true. It is not. You won't affirm a child that is crying and throwing tantrum because he wants to eat sand and say, oh, because I love you, my dear, eat it. It's crunchy, yeah? You won't do that. So love doesn't affirm all things. Love doesn't affirm all things. So that's not true. Another one is follow your heart. It is already obvious how this is a wrong one. Another one is calling evil good, or saying, oh, it is good. I feel this way. It's natural, so it must be good. Because, as I said, everybody is born with an orientation to do something bad. Because we are born naturally with the desires does not necessarily make it good. What makes it good is what the objective moral lawgiver says is good and is wrong, right? And if we have found that morals do not come from us, then it comes from that objective moral lawgiver, and he is the one that would determine what's good or bad is, right? And so, all of these things are the ideology, a few of the ideologies that the community is based on. And understanding this will help us to be able to, address or approach them, knowing that, okay, if I do this, or this, understanding that the reason why they act towards, any resistance or any non-affirmation of their beliefs or ideology or orientation is because of this. We'll help us to be able to engage them effectively. Now, Lastly, I'll address, can be a Christian's approach to the LGBTQ community. I think I'd lastly close with this. So if you have questions, we can start preparing them. We still have like quite a number of minutes. But then, what should be the Christian's approach to members of that community and the community as large? And the first thing that we need to understand, and I think it's very important because a number of Christians might not, I think I've been in that kind of position before, and I've seen people around me also being in that kind of position before. And it's understandable, but it's not really the correct approach, right? But one thing I'll say is that, see, it is not enough that they are straight. What God is calling them to be is saved, not straight. So it is not enough that they are straight. There are a lot of straight people that are still going to hell. And so it's not a gospel of heterosexual attraction. It's not a gospel of being straight, of having one man loving a woman and one woman loving. No, it is a gospel of God. Does that mean that we should now, accept and tolerate, um, accept or affirm that homosexual behaviors? No. But then it means that, see, as I said, I have also been in that shoes where all alarms, all hell will break loose, right? If I suddenly find out that somebody around me was homosexual, and note that person, before I found out that the person was homosexual or had homosexual behaviors or attraction, that I didn't really care whether the person was saved or not. So I never preached the gospel to them. I never saw the urgency to, I never even saw the urgency to pray for this person, right? But one day I found out that, you are gay. All alarms start going off in my head. Oh my God, why are you gay? This. So it seems that what was actually troubling me was not that the person was in sin or unsaved. What was troubling me is that the person had homosexual behaviors or attraction. And so it shows much about my heart. So my heart is not about, the unsaved being or remaining unsaved. Is that probably because I have what's the word now? I have an inconvenience with homosexual behaviors being around me. Are we are we getting what I'm trying to say? So I have, an inconvenience with homosexual behaviors being around me. And so all of the things that I'm trying to do in that moment in time, whether or not I agree, whether or not I accept, whether or not I believe it, the reason I'm doing a lot of things that I'm doing is just I wish by some miracle that this person will just be straight and not saved. Do I have a witness in the house? Do you understand what I'm saying? You get. So what I'm doing is so that this person will be straight but not saved, whether we agree or not. Because this person was unsaved before. The day you found out that, the person is liking the same gender, then it's like all hell has broken loose. Right. And it's not supposed to be so. Right. Am I saying that homosexual behaviors and attraction is right in the context of God? No. But what I'm saying is that, see, when we are addressing them, our approach is not to make them straight. I'm preaching the heterosexual gospel. You must like men if you are a woman. You must like women if you are a guy. No, it is that they are saved from their sin, because sin is the issue. Right? It should not that we will now leave the issue and be treating the symptoms. We leave the sickness and be addressing the symptoms alone. Right? Sin is the issue, and God is calling them to be saved. He's not calling them to be straight alone. So God isn't calling people to be straight. He's not calling the LGBTQ plus community to be straight. He's calling them to be saved. And of course, one will lead to the other. But our focus should be on the most important thing. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so if we understand this, I think if we understand this, the Christian's approach would change a lot. The Christian's approach is not the fire brigade. Why are you gay? You know that I mean? You are gay. Why are you gay? That should not be the Christian's approach. The Christian's approach is that they know Christ and they are saved. And one thing will lead to the other. One thing will lead to the other. All right. And I recommend another book on this LGBTQ and the Christian's approach thing. And this was written by, she's now a Christian. She has, I think, at least two kids. She's married with her husband, but she was once gay. Yes, she was a lesbian. She had girlfriends that they used to do stuff, you know. Let me not paint vivid pictures. And then she told her story in this her book. Her name is Jackie Hill Perry. Many of us know her already. Woman of God, right? But she was gay once. And this is something that a lot of Christians, regardless of whether we want to accept it or not, and even the LGBTQA community, are not fathom to be a past thing. That there is a was to being gay. How do you mean she was? It is either you are gay or you are not, right? But she was gay, but she got saved, right? She got saved, God changed her life. She has a husband now. She has kids. All of those things are beautiful. Or the most important and most beautiful thing of her story is that she got saved. Amen. She are getting me, because again, heterosexual gospel, right? That's not the gospel, right? So I recommend our book. Our book is called "Gay Girl, Good God." Gay Girl, Good God, Jackie Hill Perry. I think it's an amazing book to give the perspective of somebody who was once gay and who was in the context of gay, of a gay relationship and gay attraction, same-sex attractions. And she also advised how believers or Christians can engage people who are um, having same-sex attraction, which I would go over in a bit. So first of all, I think I already mentioned this. The first thing that she mentioned, the first thing that she mentioned is that, see, we are more than our sexuality. And I said that, earlier, in that saying that, your sexuality cannot be the entirety of your identity. So you are more than your sexuality. And this is an idea that, see, a lot of people in the LGBTQ plus community have embedded and etched into their mind that I am my sexuality. My sexuality is me. I am my sexuality. And that is not true. Right? We are much more, your identity cannot be summed up in your sexual attraction. It's too little to be your identity. Right? There are much, and of course, for the Christian, we know where identity comes from in what Christ has called us. Right? So even when we have an understanding that, okay, there's somebody who is unsaved, and even when believers have those attractions, right, we should understand that, see, we are more than our sexuality. Our sexuality is based on who God has called us, what God has called us, right, and where He is calling us. So for the unbeliever, where is God calling you to be saved? And when you come to the cross, at that cross, the things that need to come off will be called off in sanctification, right? And all of those things. And even for the believer, sanctification also would work for the believer that has same-sex attraction, because they are believers, they're people in church that do have this thing. As I said, they are natural, they are in our nature. We are born with the orientation to do something bad, right? So, sanctification would work things, but we have to understand that, see, our desires, our feelings, our temptations, as it were, are not us. Because sin wants us to get beyond, the fact that, oh, we are just doing sin. I will say, God forgive me, we'll do it again. Say, God forgive. Sin, that's not what sin wants. The ultimate goal of the devil and of sin is to get us to a point where we accept it as our identity. I guess what I'm saying. I accept it, this is who I am. There's no need to fight. There's no need to resist. Let me just go with the flow. It's who I am. But much more than your temptations, much more than your feelings, and this is beyond sexuality now, right? Generally, much more than your temptations, much more than your feelings, your identity is much more than that. Much more than that. So understanding that we are more than our identity would help in addressing and approaching the LGBTQ plus community. Right. And the next thing is, I think I already said this in a form that she mentioned, is that, see, we need to understand that marriage is not the pinnacle of the Christian faith. Oh, I think I will mention, let me just note it down. It just came to my mind. I'll come back to that later, but let me write it down so that I don't forget. Marriage is not the pinnacle of Christian faith, in that we want to call people or homosexual guys, the LGBT community, to, oh, you have to be married in an heterosexual marriage, That's not the pinnacle of the Christian faith. Because the truth is, how do I say this now? That would not sound like me. The truth is that, see, there are a lot of other people that would come to the faith. Of course, they would not act out, they would not, engage their sexual their same-sex attractions or same-sex relationships anymore because they want to live for God and they want to please him in all that they do. Can we still hear me? Let me just check that. Can we still hear me? Awesome. They want to, thank you. They want to live for God and they want to please him in all that thank you very much, guys. They want to live for God and to want to please him in all that they do. But at the same time, it is hard for them to be in an heterosexual relationship because they probably don't have the affection towards somebody of the opposite sex. There are people like, and it is not a bad thing for them to stay single. Do we get so as believers, our idea should not be if I can just get you married to somebody of the opposite sex, I think I will cure in quotes cure you of your homosexuality. No, what will in quotes cure them is the power of the gospel. Power of God to salvation to all men. So marriage is not the pinnacle of Christianity. You can be unmarried and love God with all your heart and see Jesus in glory. So the third thing she says, singleness is not a curse. Because a lot of people also actually come to the faith. And I'll speak about something. A lot of people actually also come to the faith and from the LGBTQ community, and they just want to be single because, like I said, they don't have attraction towards your opposite sex, and which is love the Lord. And sanctification is being worked in your heart. Kind of those, and the people who say, how am I sure that you are not cured yet? Let me marry. Like, singleness is not a curse. Let them be. If they don't want to, that's fine. Jackie, on the other hand, got married, right? She has a husband. She has children. Glory to God. There are cases like that. But there are also other people that, they probably do not, would never, probably, right? So it's not a curse for them to stay single. Their singleness is the sacrifice that they are making for the love of the Lord. And I'll still talk about this sacrifice thing, right, in a bit. And then number 4 in engaging the LGBTQ community is that evangelism is about God. It's not about their orientation. Evangelism is about God. Because as I said, I am sounding angry. Evangelism is about God. Because as I said, right, it is not a call to be straight. It is not a call. We would not want to cure a symptom while leaving out the main root of the problem. So we want to cure them of their sexuality, but then we are ignoring and neglecting the issue, which is sin, the issue that their soul is depraved and needing of a savior. And then do you get the goal of evangelism is about God, is about getting their soul saved and reunited with God, right? And not their homosexuality or their sexual orientation. And it is true to say that, so I wanted to say that, it is true to understand and to agree that, it is hard. A lot of, sorry, excuse me. A lot of us might, actually agree and say things like, it is hard, it is not easy, for people of that community to come to the faith, and which is true. It is not, because the ugly heads of their same-sex attraction will still want to come up, and temptations will want to raise their head. But this is one thing that Jackie put in her book. Jackie, you're in the book Gay Girl Good God. Gay Girl Good God. GGGG. Is that this SSA, same-sex attracted Christian, as she puts it, SSA. I know this is not to say gay Christian, because the latter denotes identity, while the former denotes temptation or feeling. Do we get the difference? So saying same-sex attracted Christian is not the same as saying gay Christian. Okay. Because each one is tempted, as James says. So he's talking about the temptation as a con. Do we understand this, guys? Do we get the distinction? Cool. You guys are not responding again. Thank you, Shai. All right. All for putting it saliently, for the believers that still, once in a while the temptation seems to come up. And a lot of people have actually come to the faith and then left again because, man, it's just so hard, as Jackie says in her book. But one thing that we need to understand is, see, there's an endurance that would come to the faith. Enduring, our sanctification is being worked in our hearts and worked in us and worked in our bodies by the Spirit, right? Enduring temptation will still want to raise its ugly head. And this happens not, and to be honest, we need to identify that happens for everybody and not just for people who are in that or from that community. It happens to every one of us in that the orientation to do something bad, whatever it is that our orientation or whatever our own bad was, right, would still face, every one of us will still face, that struggle of the temptations of our past selves, of our past lives wanting to come back again. And, it might seemingly be harder for some people than others, right? But, I said that to say that this is common for everyone. And this applies to everybody, not just for the people from that community. But, she was saying particularly for that, like, is that a lot of people leave Christian faith because I'm feeling like this, and believing the lie that it's just it's still how my identity, all of those things that I really can't change, and it's just hard to want to live for God and all of those things. Jackie, encouraged, and I'm quoting her because she's the one that has been in that community and has been out, right? And for years, decades, even, I've been standing and living for God, and all of those things. So I think it is her word, not mine, right? Because how do I know? I've never been there. But that's why I'm intentionally quoting her. Jackie quips that it is endurance on the part of particularly the person who has those attractions and tendencies that, bro, there are things that understanding that there are things that would have to let go and sacrifice for the one whom we love. And of course, this goes on to understanding what sin is and how sin is not beautiful, and sin is defined by the one whom has saved us, who is God. And understanding how beautiful God is, and despite the fact that in the times of our temptation and in times of our feeling, it's always sin wants to always makes us feel like, oh, this is the truth, this is where our happiness and purpose will come from. And if we do not do this now, we are denying ourselves of what true happiness and purpose is, and all of those things, right? But then having that understanding that God is more beautiful than whatever sin or this temptation will give or offer me, and would help us breast endurance, even when desires are breast temptation, right? So that it would not breast sin. Are you guys what I'm saying? So endurance on the part that, see, yes, it is not easy. And it's not like God is unfair to say, oh, I was naturally born that way. It is true for everybody born of man, of Adam, right? It's what we inherited in our figurative gene. I would say gene, but then that can be misconstrued. In our figurative gene, right? And that is in no way to invalidate your struggles, to be honest. But the truth is, at the end of the day, if our love and Lord is Jesus, then we all would have to hold on or drop off some things for him. Drop off some things for him. So for the homosexual or the queer, hmm, hmm, let me say that again. For the person who is coming from that kind of a past, from the LGBTQ community, and is in Christian, and so some of those affections are coming off. It could be to probably stay single, or endure through the attractions, as it is not easy for the same sex attracted person. It would be to, because, and this is the thing, a lot of people, because they are straight and you get married, it doesn't, it's not really, that's not really a cure, because we are not, it's not like we're wired to have sex, permit the language, so yeah, have sex with one person all days of our lives. So you get, and I think it's Stuart Cliff that said this, so because I get married does not cleanse or cure somebody of promiscuity. Do you get? But Of course, the argument follows because it is easier in that sense. At least you'll be able to, you know, you get what I mean. But then for the person that is not from that community or did not have that kind of experience, it could be, sacrificing an endurance would be in another sense. It could be money for some people. It could be, as I said, promiscuity for some people. So some people might even not get married, like Paul, right? So having this understanding and having understanding of these things and how to engage, how we can shift our minds as Christians, as a Christian, to engage this community, and how we can even help them to see themselves. And probably somebody from that community that might pick this up, or a believer that a host from that community, or having affections in this regard, and thinking, what do I do? I hope this would have helped to see that, there's more to your identity than your sexuality, and God wants you saved. That doesn't mean that you would not require that part of your life is dealt with. Of course, that is done in sanctification, but much more than that. And of course, you're going to surrender, but much more than that is calling them to be saved first. Right. And then he is enabling them by the Holy Spirit, because that is the way that these things are helped, not by you must be straight, you must marry off. It's not marriage that kills them of sin. It is God in his mercies and the Holy Ghost working sanctification in our hearts, right? That cures, in quotes. God is calling them to be saved and not to be straight. Marriage is not, and singleness is not a curse. Marriage is the pinnacle of Christian faith. Evangelism is about God, child of God. Evangelism is about God. And most importantly, pray for them. All right. And I think I didn't put this in mind, but it's very important. Pray for the people if you read Jackie's book, you'll find how a close member of our family was the one in prayer. See, Father, Jackie, when they found out that she was gay and all of that, pray for them. See, our prayers go farther than we imagine, especially, with reaching unsaved people. Pray for them. Pray for them. Pray for the people in the queer community. If you know anybody, mention their name. Pray for them every day. You see, one day they can just text you, I have a question about God. That's such a thing has happened to me before. I was so happy. Say, hey, you. I don't know. I don't know. You guys ever experienced that thing before? The joy in my heart. Oh my God, this person I've been praying for. Thank you. Thank you. Pray for them. Our prayers go farther than we can even ever imagine. All right. So God is able to, finally, this is the last thing I will say. God is able to call anyone to himself, regardless of what they are in and what they are doing, or what they have been doing. All right. God is able to call anyone to himself, regardless of what they are in and what they have been doing. It's already a long time since we started. This is 1 hour 45 minutes after the time. I didn't even think it was going to extend to this time, but I think it was quite a good session. Thank you all for being here. I don't know if anybody has questions. You can maybe raise your hand or drop the. Okay, you have a question, Tega? All right, good. Would you? Okay, I think you'd unmute then. Is that a question?
Yes, I do have a question.
All right, go ahead, Margaret.
Okay. So on this same, topic, I think it was very profound that you did mention that it's a sin issue and not a sexuality thing. So that's not what we're tackling.
Yeah.
But on this issue, on this, the LGBTQ matter, I have heard people say things, and I just want to clarify whether or not it's true, to what extent, the statement I'm about to make holds true, that there are some sins that weigh more than others. So in their bid to win them over and then do exactly what you said they should not do, which is tackle their sexuality, they would say that sexuality weighs more, for example, than say a person's innate ability to lie, right? Because you said that everyone is born with not you, but the Bible says everyone is born with that sinful nature.
Yeah.
Some people just express it in different ways, right? So for someone that maybe expresses it through lying, they could say that is less of a sin than someone who does it through the LGBTQ, that form of sexuality, basically. So I'm just like, what exactly is the balance of that? Does it hold true and everything?
Well, mm, in saying that, I think I understand, the context of the question. Hmm. However, but saying that in the context of saying, okay, so if it was lying now, so just put it in perspective for the people that give the arguments. If it was lying now, there's a different sin. Um, is a less weightier sin than their homosexuality. But however, but it doesn't still hold that addressing the homosexuality because it's a bigger sin, right? Or addressing it in one way or the other is what gets them saved. If I'm getting your question right, Edgar. Right. Even if it is true, let's assume that it is true that okay, one sin is bigger than the other, right? But at the end of the day, what gets them saved rather is not seemingly not that they stop committing whatever in quotes sin it is. What gets them saved is that we focus on what is the gospel, right? And allowing the work of sanctification to work in them. Do you get what I'm saying? So Tega, you with me? So, in the
Yes,
context
sir.
of even if we assume that okay, yes, lying is lesser than homosexual tendencies, right? It still doesn't follow because one is bigger than the other does not mean that okay, so one is bigger, let's attack this thing. So stop doing this. It still doesn't get them saved, right? And it doesn't cure them of other expressions of sin because even if they by some way, right, without being saved, even if they let's assume that is possible, by some way, stop those expressions, they are still their nature is still sinful, right? And so that is why it is more important to cure the root than the expressions. And engaging or attacking the symptoms, regardless of what we think is the weight, right, does not cure the root. If we take the root, regardless of the weight, the symptoms or the expressions of it would wane, right? The symptoms or the expressions of it would wane. And so, in the context or in the sense of what takes us away from God, right? Sin is sin. In that context of what takes us away from God, what separates us, or what is the separation, you know, because the holy nature of God. And you get what I'm saying? Sin is in that context. Okay. So have I been able to answer your question, Tega?
Yes, you have absolutely. Thank you so much, sir.
All right, great. Thank you. So in that context, right, it's still whether or not one is weaker than the other, even if you are assuming that, whether or not it is, it still doesn't really have much of an effect, right? Because if you say one is bigger than the other, I want to attack the bigger one, it still doesn't solve the problem. They're still going to hell regardless, right? So yeah. Um, is there any other question, or we can call it a night? Does anybody else have a question? Naomi, for anybody? No questions. I'll give you a moment in case you can just raise your hand so that you want to ask a question. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Naomi. Thank you so much, everyone, for Moshere. Is that a question? Please, you can go ahead.
Okay, good evening, sir. Good evening, everybody. I
All
didn't get what you um meant by, like, you said there's a difference between same-sex attracted Christians and gay Christians. I
Yeah.
don't get the difference.
Okay. So let's if we take away the context from same-sex attraction. Now let's take it to someone who had a lot of sex outside of marriage before he got married, right? Or before he got saved, rather. So let's assume the person is still unmarried, or maybe married, self, right? But then, even as he became saved, he became a Christian. He still had the temptation sometimes to want to sleep with people, right? Does that make him a fornicator, or does it just make him have to have, you know, a tendency or a temptation to want to do the things that he used to do before? You can mute your mic to answer.
No, the the person could just have the temptations.
Temptations, right? So that is what I meant, when I said same-sex attraction attracted Christians. They probably, once, from time to time have that temptation or tendencies to want to do the things that they used to do before. But having to say gay Christians would imply identity. You get, like, that is who they are. Who they are is gay, and there's nothing such thing as gay Christian. Do you get? Because identity is found in Christ, and Christ does not call them gay. Do you get? Do you understand what I
Yes, I do. Yes, I
all right,
do. Thank you
awesome.
so much.
Thank you,
Thank
Moshe.
you.
All right. Any other question so that would wrap it up? Okay. I'll assume none. I really want to appreciate everyone. Many of you have stayed right from the beginning up till now. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Shayo. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kofo. Thank you, Pua. Thank you, Naomi, Fioluashe, Mushere, Tega. God bless you. We're having another one next month, and it could actually be the last session of the defense series. All right, so it's been quite a time. God has helped us. So the defense series is coming to an end. Probably it's next month rather. So God will help us. All right. So if there are any things that you missed and you want to catch up on a session, it's all available on my YouTube channel, D George D. That's my first name actually, but many people don't know me by that name. But you can see that on my Google, uh, Meet name, David. Right. D. Oluwajoju Ademuyiwa. That's the name of my YouTube channel, and on Spotify, D. Space Oluwajoju. Right. You can catch up on all of those sessions right from January up to the last session that we did at the beginning of this month. And this session will also be uploaded to Spotify and YouTube as well as next month's session. So thank you so much, everyone, once again. I believed you learned and you were blessed. Thank you so much for attending. I hope to see you again next month. All right. And once the recordings are out, you probably, if you subscribe and you have the notifications on, you would get a notification when it's uploaded, because I may not remember to share the link. All right. But once you get them, you can just share them with somebody that might need this. Right. So when you get the flyer next month, share them as well. So thank you once again, everyone. Have an amazing night. God bless you. Bye bye.